Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning, everyone. A warm welcome to all of you to the inaugural function of 3 days faculty development program on AICTE exam reforms. An overview organized by Department of Mechanical Engineering, ATME CE, Mysore. Participants from all over India, from Jammu and Kashmir to Tamil Nadu, have registered for the faculty development program. The FDP is intended to provide an overview of AICTE exam reforms, which is essential in the adaptation of outcome-based education framework and enhanced focus on higher order learning and professional skills in traditional practices of curriculum design, education delivery, and assessment. On this occasion, our beloved principal, Dr. Basavaraju Ellis, is with us. I extend a warm welcome to you, sir.
Good morning.
Also among the presents, we have our Professor and Dean, Academics, Dr. M.S. Govindegowda. I extend a hearty welcome to you, sir. Further, we have our Professor and Dean, Student Welfare, Dr. Ratnakarji with us. I extend a warm welcome to you, sir. Also, I would like to extend a warm welcome to our Professor and Dean, Research and Development, Dr. Bhagyashree R. Welcome, madam. Furthermore, I extend a hearty welcome to all the department heads, faculties, and participants to the 3-day faculty development program on AICTE exam reforms and overview. Now, I request our Honorable Principal, Dr. Basavaraju L., to formally inaugurate the event and give the inaugural address. Over to you, sir.
Good morning. Are you hearing my voice?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Good morning, sir. Hearing. Yes.
Okay. Good morning, all the participants.
Good morning, sir.
Morning. Okay. AICTE has taken up examination reform few years back in the big way and came up with an examination reform policy in 2010. So many workshops have been conducted both in online and offline by AICTE throughout India, across India since last 1 year. Our faculty members have attended one of that workshop in the month of April 2020. The workshop was hosted by Professor Ashish Gupta, Professor Tiwari, Professor Gopal Joshi, all are from JEE Technological University building. Now, in the backdrop of new education policy implemented by Central HRD Ministry, who has recently named as Minister of Education, it has become in all the sectors of education. At the end of 4 days online workshop conducted by AICTE in the month of April, the resource persons requested all the participants to share the knowledge gained about exam reform with the faculty of the respective colleges and also with the faculties of neighboring colleges. To fulfill the requirement, our staff members have organized 3 days FDP online. It is good to know that participants from all over India, even from Jammu and Kashmir to Tamil Nadu, have registered for this 3 days workshop. I sincerely hope that FDP is going to be useful for all the participants, and I wish all the best for the organizers and resource persons. So without wasting my time, I declare this FDP open and once again wish you all the very best. Thank you all. Hello. Hello.
Thank you very much, sir. I request all the participants to mute their microphone, please. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Now, let's quickly move into the session number 1 of the today's schedule. The topic in session 1 is Introduction to AICTE exam reforms. Professor Ravi Kumar S., Associate Professor, Mechanical Engineering Department, ADME CE, will engage the session and disseminate the information. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Ashwant. Good morning to one and all, and welcome to this 3-day FDP on AICTE exam reforms and overview. As our Honorable Principal said in his inaugural speech, this is an attempt being made by myself and my dear colleagues to disseminate the knowledge what we have gained in the online workshop what we attended in the month of April 2020 organized by AICTE, and that knowledge what we have gained is going to be very crucial in the coming years, because in the backdrop of new education policy, it has become important for all of us, especially in the education field, to adopt to this new education policy and bring about changes in our approach. In that aspect, AICTE has taken up these exam reforms very seriously, and a few professors have been working extensively since a few years. And in the year 2018, they have come up with this examination reforms policy 2018, and it was accepted by AICTE. And that reforms suggest many things. And during this 3 days workshop, we are going to understand what is all that is about, and how we are going to successfully implement that across India, especially in the professional education. Now moving further, the slides ಬರ್ತಾವಲ್ಲ ಇದು ಇದಲ್ಲ So the contents of my presentation today is going to be, I'll be telling you about AICT initiatives to improve quality of technical education in India. A lot of initiatives as taken by AICTE to keep up with the requirements of the modern world, and a lot of initiatives have taken by AICTE to improve the quality of technical education in India. We'll talk about it a bit. Then most important thing is student learning and how we look into that. We'll be learning about that. And importantly, key drivers for examination reforms. What has necessitated this reforms in the examination system, that we will look into it. And after that, 3 issues addressed by AICTE exam reforms policy will be looked into that, and those are assessment strategy for OBE, outcome-based education, improving the structure and quality of our assessment, and third one is assessing higher order abilities and professional skills. So these are the 3 important issues addressed by AICTE exam reforms policy. We study that in detail. We'll just look into that over a period of 3 days. And today I'll be giving just an overview into all these 3 things. And at the end, of course, I'll be touching upon who has to do and what needs to be done to make this exam reforms policy a reality. Now, first of all, out of many initiatives the AICTE has taken up since many decades in keeping up the quality of technical education in India, the first is it is been providing a model curriculum for various engineering disciplines. Across India, all technical institutions have taken that as a model to design maybe a government university or a private university or even autonomous colleges. They have taken that model curriculum as the base of their program design and have been successfully delivering quality education throughout India. The base for that all curriculum is being provided by the AICTE. And then recently the AICTE has taken up a program promoting MOOC, that is a massive open online courses through SWAYAM. And this has been a success because a lot of faculties across India for belonging to different programs and even the students have made use of this program. It was a massive online open course where anyone can register for these courses, and very good eminent professors from IITs and NITs have been delivering lectures on many various diverse topics. And this has been especially during this pandemic period has been a very big hit because it has been taught online. Anyone can register on online, it can register, and these are very useful in disseminating the technical knowledge throughout India. This was one initiative taken by the AICTE, which has been very much useful both for the faculties as well as the students. And another thing, recently, 2 years back, AICTE has proposed a training induction program for the first year students of an engineering course, because it has been felt that the students coming from the +2 or PUC, what we call in Karnataka, +2, after completing their +2 course, 12th standard, they enter into a professional college, and the learning models will be slightly different from that of 12th standard. So students need to adjust to that, and it has been observed. Students found it very difficult in the beginning to get adjusted to this new atmosphere of learning and a new curriculum. And to ease out this situation, just to make the students comfortably inducted into whatever the program they choose, it has been planned to train them in the first 3 weeks of the first semester first 3 weeks of the beginning semester, students will be given some trainings on various topics. And for that, the teachers need training, and that training the ACT has given, conducted a lot of workshops across India. A lot of engineering faculties have taken the training and have been successfully implementing that in their engineering colleges, especially for the first year students to get adjusted to the new environment. And lastly, recommending guidelines for mandatory internship program. Nowadays, earlier, when I was doing my engineering way back 2 decades back and 3 decades back, the internship was not mandatory, especially the students coming from third year, after completion of the third year course during semester holidays, they used to visit some industries for their internship training program. But it was not made mandatory, and it was not given any credits. But now the ACT has felt that it is very much important for the students to undergo a internship program, and it has been included in many universities across India now. It has become mandatory for a student to undergo an internship training program. So these are the few important initiatives the ACT has taken over a period of many years just to keep up with the required phase of the quality of the engineering education in India. Now, next is student learning. I'll be coming to that exam reforms a bit later. Before that, the main intention or the purpose of this whole engineering education by the universities or the institutes is to make the student learn. And this student learning is becoming a fast changing scenario. Students of the years are not like this. When I was studying, as I told you 2 decades back, the teaching learning process was different. It was all teacher centric, and now it is all student centric, because we have focused more on the outcome rather than the output. So that has made us to look the student learning in a different way. Now it is not called as teaching or learning, it's called as educational experience. The student will be with us for 4 years, and our primary goal is to provide him a very good educational experience when he was studying in engineering, because engineering is learned through these experiences. And what knowledge he gains during the course, what skills he develops, and what are the different abilities he's going to gain so that he become a better person or a better professional after the completion of course. So all those things happen in these 4 years, very crucial for them. And this educational experience is going to play a large role in the success of a student. Of course, it is the very intention of every institutes or institutions and universities to see that this happens very, very successfully and should be done very carefully. And there are 3 key elements for this very good educational experience. And those 3 for the student learning are the curriculum, pedagogy, and assessment. These are the 3 pillars on which a student's learning or our quality of education depends. So in order to provide a quality education to an engineering student, we need to have these 3 factors well planned and well executed. Of course, the first is curriculum. Throughout India, many universities and autonomous colleges have been very dynamic in changing their curriculums frequently. It's a general rule that every 4 years the curriculum gets refreshed, a new scheme will be introduced, new subjects will be introduced, and new laboratories will be introduced just to fulfill the requirements of the industries. Regular interaction with the industries people will be carried out, and their feedbacks are always taken, and that whatever the changes required to suit the modern technology, uh, the curriculum has been changing. It was being dynamic. uh, Introduction of interdisciplinary courses and new labs, all those things play a very important role in imparting what contemporary good engineering education. So curriculum was dynamic, we can say, without any doubt that the curriculums were up to date. The next thing, what you want to decide on what are the contents of your educations are going to be, then how to deliver it now for the students effectively. This has been a very challenging thing, and over a period of time, say about 4 decades or 5 decades, if you take, except for the last 5 to 10 years. Earlier to that, it was only a regular classroom teaching was the one which has been implemented and followed throughout India, where the students were taught the technical subjects uh, in the regular classroom, like a chalk and talk. Blackboard is to be there, and the lecturer goes with a chalk piece, and he is going to deliver the lecturer and write on the. Uh, Later, a sincere request to all the participants, please mute yourself so that it will not be disturbing here. Please mute yourself unless when I ask some questions or when the feedback session is there, then we can have that discussion. Otherwise, please keep your microphones mute. Thank you. So this pedagogy, recently, in the last 5 to 10 years, the people have started using some technology, say using of overhead projector or LCD projectors in the classroom, showing them the PPTs, and some videos are being shared. And recently, in the last 5 to 10 years, as I said, the use of communication, information technology, media has made this delivery of the contents has been given a boost with which the students can have more access to the study materials, and more effective teaching could be done. But yet it is not sufficient. Not all colleges are doing it, or not all students are benefited from this, because it requires some resources. Because of that shortage of resources, this pedagogy, except in some few colleges, or not all colleges could implement this effectively. But they can say there is a small change, as you can say, over the say if you take a 3 decades or 4 decades educational systems in engineering, a small changes have been made in the pedagogy, you can say. But the third element, the assessment, and I can say absolutely no changes has been made since 4 decades. The examinations we conduct to check the abilities of the students, or the knowledge, what knowledge a student have gained, or what skill he has gained. So all those things is to be tested by a fixed hour written examination. So this has been the main tool for our assessment even till today, except in a few subjects. Most of the subjects have been tested using this fixed hour, a 3 hour examination, usually in the written form. This actually in a sense, tests the students' memory capacity or to some extent understanding how much he has understood, that's all. But other abilities you cannot assess using these type of examinations. It's a lot needs to be done in this area of the three key elements, which requires huge reforms in order to meet the expectations of this new world, the new professionals, their employers, what they expect their graduates to have is cannot be tested with this limited time written examinations. Okay, so then we'll just see what education researchers say. Over a period of, again, 20, 30 years, a lot of educational researchers have worked extensively, and they have studied how the education system is there and how the quality of education being delivered. And they have come out with some interesting factors. So one of that, an important one, which is very much relevant to our topic of the FDP, George E. Miller found that assessment drives student learning. See, I remember when I was studying my engineering, one of my professor, Professor Nagarajaya, used to tell me, see, when I asked him, sir, what are the important questions like for the test? And he said, no, don't go by question papers. Study the content. And what is given in the syllabus, you study those things, and out of that only they will ask the questions, and you can answer any question you want. The main focus was there on the content. You learn the content. But over a period of time, it has been observed that no matter what the professors tell their students, students are always invariably this country or that country, this institute or that institute, government university, private university, wherever you go, it has been found the students' focus is always on the examination. Even when I was studying, I used to study the previous year question papers, what type of questions used to come. And for that I used to get prepared. That's the normal thing they do. So that shows that assessment drives students' learning. The students learn depending on the assessment. How the examination is going to be. Based on that, the students generally learn. That means assessment drives student learning. Another educational researcher, Ramsden, has found that assessment drives similar to that. What students pay attention to and defines the actual curriculum. Usually, what students pay attention to, only those things they'll learn. And where do they pay the attention? They pay attention towards the assessment very much. What is going to be asked or what type of test we are going to give them. Is it an oral one? Is it a written one? Or is it a project-based assessment? All these things. And even if we say, depending on the subjects also, some theory subjects, the students' approach will be different, or a subject with some numerical problems, the students' approach will be different. So, because the question papers will be tough, as they say, like that, assessment drives what students pay attention to and defines the actual curriculum. And another researcher says is written a law, it's just called as a law of educational cause and effect. And that states that for every evaluative action, there is an equal or even greater educational reaction. See, has put it nicely here. For every evaluative action, there is an equal or greater educational reaction. I'll just would like to quote a practical situation. Whenever the internal tests or internal assessment tests are announced or the examinations are approaching, the students usually come to the lecturers saying, sir, what is going to be the syllabus for this test and what type of questions may be asked. Will there be theory questions? Will there be derivations given, or will there be numerical problems involved? Should we be bringing the data handbook? All such questions, because they are very much concentrated on what is going to be asked in the examination or the test. So based on that, they prepare. If the lecturer says, okay, there will not be problems, will not be given, numerical problems will not be given, you need not bring your data handbook or the calculator, then the students take it easy and he'll go and study, casually, something will come and write. And even if I may say so, I don't know, no offense to anybody, but if there are some lecturers who are not so strict as we call, in those subjects the students study a bit casually, because it's all the reality. I'm not hiding anything. Since I've been in this profession for almost 22 years now, it has been seen the students take easily on subjects. Some subjects, if the lecturer is very strict, he values very strictly and he will not allot the marks easily, then they study seriously. Then they take it up. No, this lecturer is going to be tough for us and we need to study hard. I mean, that means that shows that the way you evaluate, the way you give the questions in the test or examination makes the students to give an educational reaction. So this is one what the Shuvit has found out. And there is one more researcher who said curriculum instructs teachers what to teach. So we usually, the HOD will call and allot the subjects, and the syllabus will be given by their universities, and it tells to a teacher what to teach. He follows the syllabus, he'll prepare himself, and all sorts of aids, teaching aids will take, and he'll go on delivering those contents. That's what a teacher, in the teacher's perspective, he looks into the syllabus and prepare and deliver the contents of the syllabus. But what students learn? Exam instructs students what to learn. Keeping the examination as the ultimate target, the students learn keeping the examination in their mind. See, this all been not, you might see some idealistic people may say, no, this is not right. Students should not be studying for the sake of examinations, but they should be studying for the sake of knowledge. Yeah, but the reality is this. Now, the researchers have found it. It's not happening in the world. We cannot deny that reality. We need to accept that. No matter, maybe the students may be learning to score good marks, but in that effort, it is our responsibility to see that the students earn those marks by earning a real knowledge. So instead of blaming students' attitude or students, a small focused approach rather than a broader approach, we should understand and we should facilitate whatever is required, keeping the quality of education in our mind. Okay, that's by Donald Melnick. And all these researchers' statements, if you see, it tells us one thing, that we need to be evolving a good assessment system which will drive the students' learning. So you cannot expect the students, if you are struck with a lower level type of exam system, the students' learning also gets limited to that level only. If you still persist on this 3 hours kind of a memory testing assessment mechanism, the student tends to just memorize and understand few things and write in the examination, score good marks, and go out of your institute. But the other abilities which the professional world is expecting the graduates to have might not be delivered or learned by the student because it was not a part of your examination system. So this has given us a serious thought that then how to go for examination reforms. And the team which has studied this has found key drivers for the examination reforms. Three key drivers are there, which necessitated these examination reforms, why we have to go for these reforms in our educational system. So when we studied that, they found three main key drivers which drive these educational reforms. Of that, the first one is adaptation of outcome-based educational framework. See, in the year 2013, as we all know, that 2013-14, India became a signatory to this Washington Accord. And afterwards, the AICTE has directed all universities and engineering institutes to get accredited. So NBA accreditation was made mandatory, and all the institutions are working on it, as you know, since last 6-7 years. Many colleges have got NBA accreditation, and others are in the process of getting that accreditation. And this whole NBA accreditation is based on the outcome-based educational framework. So this is an approach where the students are assessed based on the outcomes. I'll tell you about those what are those outcomes, course outcome, program specific outcomes. All those things we'll be dealing it in detail over a period of over other sessions also. My other colleagues also will be telling you a detailed approach into understanding those things. But for anything, you have to have a framework within which we need to work. Earlier, our engineering education system, prior to 2013, there was no framework at all. The university used to set some curriculum, and the faculties were given freedom, to just deliver that, and they used to have an examination and close it off. There was no any real framework earlier. Now, after this Washington Accord, there is a framework was given, and that framework is outcome-based education. So this is very essential. To bring in any examination reforms, you have to work under this outcome-based education framework, because it is the most advanced, and it has taken care, of the expectations of the employers, the real world. And this is one that the necessity of understanding this OBE is going to be very crucial in implementing our examination reforms. And the second one is growing concerns about the quality and employability of the graduates. We have been seeing these things since last a decade or so, that the employers usually complain about the quality of the graduates coming out of the institutions, and their employability is very, very less. A lot of surveys have been conducted by many people, and very disturbing results have come out of it. Some say that only 7% of them are employable. The NASSCOM shares that around 25% only are employable. So why? We need to address this, because simply producing number of engineers is of no use if they are of not quality and not employed in the actual industry. So that is one thing which drives this examination reforms. We want to make sure that they have these abilities what the employers are expecting, and that has necessitated these examination reforms, because examination reforms, the assessment drives the learning. So this is all interconnected. And the next one is importance of higher order abilities and professional skills for employability of graduates. So if you remember 20-30 years back, if anybody asks who is a good engineer, they used to say with a good academic report, a good performance academically is academically good. But now, as the time has progressed and the world has evolved, along with your academic technical knowledge, what you possess in your program. Apart from that, other professional skills, because you need to be working in an industry, you need to be interacting with the people, you need to do a lot of communication things, a lot of concerns you need to show. If you look at the POs, which I'll come later, program outcomes will tell you about those what abilities are expected by a student, a student should have. So these things again we wanted to bring in students. So this is what the key is, and these issues are addressed by the exam reforms report. Here we are going to address again three issues here. Assessment strategy for outcome-based education system. It's not only implementing OBE, and what is going to be your assessment strategy for outcome-based education system, and improving the structure and quality of assessment. This is the most important thing. We cannot just be giving the same type of questions which has been asked since decades. Right? We have to improve the structure and quality of our assessment. And then, of course, as I said, the other abilities, the higher order abilities, professional skills also should be assessed. And presently, we don't have any mechanism to assess these abilities, and we need to implement those things. We need to bring in those assessment methods into the curriculum or into the program to test those things. So now, assessment strategy for outcome-based education system. As I said, there is a need to understand the OBE thoroughly by the faculty members, because most of the time, even I have seen some colleges, though the college is NBA accredited, faculties are the understanding of OBE at the faculty level is very, can say, a nascent level. It has to be taken very seriously, and it has to be understood by the faculty, especially because they are the one who are executing everything. So you have to understand this OBE completely by the faculty members. Then only it's going to be easy for us to bring in reforms in the examination system. When it comes to that, what is the quality education system? Quality education system has three dimensions, and the first dimension is the input to the system. The resources, the infrastructure, the finances are important. To start any institution, technical institution, we need resources, the money, the build up the infrastructure. The resources not only includes money but also the faculty, the quality faculties, and to run it, we need finances. This is one dimension. If an institution is having good resources, good infrastructure, good finances, it is to be rated as a good institution, can deliver good quality education system. Then later stages it came, no, not only that is important, what happens within the system is also very important to give a good quality education system. The process used to organize, control, and deliver education is also important. For that, the ISOs have come up, certifying companies just to see what are the methods followed by you or what systems you have adopted in delivering the contents is another development. Then recently, so doing all these things, having a good infrastructure, having good resource persons, and adopting new methods or effective methods in delivering those contents. What is the output of the system is going to be? Ultimately, whatever you do, it has to give a good output. How your graduates are going to be assessed after your this thing program, and how it is going to be useful for the industry. These are the three things, three dimensions. Earlier, as I said, the traditional emphasis was given on the input. What input we give into the system was given more importance. Now the time has changed. The emphasis have been changing. Increasing emphasis always focuses on what is whatever you do, whatever you have, it doesn't matter, but what it is you're giving out, and it's going to be focused more. That is what outcome-based education system is about. So outcome is going to be very important, and how good it is going to be, or the effective thing for a quality education system. Now, this process of adopting OBE framework, of course, will be dealt in detail by our colleagues in the successive sessions, but I'll just touch upon a few important things. Formulation of program education objectives and outcomes. Now, we need to have a clarity of focus on these PEOs and outcomes, maybe the course outcome or the program outcome or the program specific outcome. We need to have clarity what you want to achieve, what is your ultimate goal educationally, right? What type of education when you are giving. So what are your objectives and how that could, the faculty need to have the institution level or at the faculty level. It is very important to have a clarity of focus on that. And then once you have the clarity on what are your objectives, then it is going to be mapping of outcomes through curriculum, through whatever the curriculum you are going to teach. So then through that, how we are going to mapping that to the outcomes, how you measure them, right? How you are mapping them, curriculum to the outcomes. That is another step. And the stage 3, design and deliver aligned teaching learning activities. So how you plan to deliver the content and how you design your course or how you design your program and how you design each topics at the topic levels and how you deliver it, how effectively you can deliver is another important stage. Yes. And then stage 4 is of course the assessing attainment of outcomes. So after doing all those things, you need to assess whether it has been successfully delivered, the student has learned it and has gained those abilities and the skills or whatever you have given them. You need to assess them, and that is the important part which we are going to address in this FDP. So the process of adopting OBE network framework, as I said, will be taken up by our faculty. But just to give a glimpse of that, as I said, the quality of focus is to know about the program outcomes. So what are these program outcomes? Program outcomes are also called as graduate attributes. What a graduate should possess once he becomes a graduate, and those are given by in India it is given by NPA and across other countries CEBET or any accreditation agencies. They will set once you become the Washington Accord signatory, we are following those 12 program outcomes what the student should have at the end of the graduation. So that is that will be dealt in detail in the later stages of this workshop, program outcomes. And this has how to attain those things, how you say that the program outcomes have been attained in all our students. So for that, we need to have a program design the program, complete. When I say program, it is mechanical engineering or computer science engineering or electronics engineering, civil engineering. So each is a program, different programs. Those programs need to be, the content should be designed, the planning of execution should be decided, and an assessment mechanism should be developed to test all those things. And these things are done at the course levels. The course, when I say it's a subject, and different courses will be there in the program, and those courses are going to be delivered and assessed. And those course, each course will be having its own course outcomes, and all these course outcomes collectively will be achieving the desired program outcomes. This is what the process is going to be like. Through the courses, to each topic in the courses, and all courses in the program collectively give an achievement that all these program outcomes are achieved. Traditionally, this has to go, the design has to go top-down approach. First, you need to have clarity of focus of what to be done and how to be done, and then how to achieve it, of course, through the courses, and what are the courses to be like, then how to design those courses, all those things has to be go. But here, and the assessment goes the other way. Assess the subject, assess the program, the assessment of each topics will take, assessment of each courses will take, and then collectively assessment of the PO could be done. Assessment goes from bottom to top. But here, when we say the courses are going to help us in attaining the program outcomes, how are we going to show and how are you going to map or how are you going to assess the program outcomes, because the complications of program outcomes I'll tell you in the later stages. But this middle part was missing, even in some effective assessment is missing. Because of the lack of clarity and unrealistic assessment. We try to, we all have been given the syllabus in the university, and we are trying to achieve our program outcomes. We are trying to kind of force fit whatever we have into achieving those program outcomes. But yet there are some lot of confusions among the faculty members at the personal level, or at the program level, or at the institution level. We need to clear out all those things before bringing any reforms. All the POs, I'll just run through this, because it will be dealt in the different sessions by the different my dear colleagues. So all these PO1, PO2, all the graduate attributes, which the abilities the student will be able to apply knowledge of mathematics, the engineering knowledge, problem analysis, design, development of solutions. We got like the 12 POs are there, and many engineering colleges are already aware of all these things. It has been announced, it has been studied to some extent. These program outcomes, PO1 to PO12, give us a clarity of what we should be doing. Be it a government university, a private university, or autonomous college, or affiliated college, whatever it is, all, if you are coming under NBA, if you want to get accreditation from NBA, you need to attain these program outcomes. So this will tell us where to focus and give us a kind of clarity, so that we can move forward with some plan. So of course, then the process of adopting OBE framework, the main thing is the faculty. Faculties are the one who are handling some courses, and the first question comes to them is, what are the expectations of the program outcomes? Program outcomes are so generic, so deep, and how my subject is going to contribute in attaining those outcomes. That is the one important thing. What we need to understand the faculty level, and design and deliver the content, and what the student is expected to learn and attain. We need to have clarity on that. Usually, how my course outcomes connect to these expectations is the one thing which a faculty should understand. Always, this lack of clarity is going to create confusions among the faculty members at individual level as well as the system level. If you want to take these confusions out, a faculty, all the faculties for that matter, need to be educated on how this OBE is going to be adopted. Right. As I said already, the topic, each subject will be having the courses, 1, 2, 3, 4, a number of courses will be there in the program. And of course, each course will be having its own learning outcomes, topic learning outcomes, course learning outcomes, and then ultimately program outcomes. How to attain the program outcome? There is no other way but to see that these two things happen very well. So it depends upon how well the topic learning outcomes and the course learning outcomes are attained. Based on that, the program outcome can be attained. Sorry. The assessment strategy, of course, starts from the bottom to the top. That means content, as I told. So for any system to work, as they say, the chain is as strong as its weakest link. A study, experience shows that a realistic measurement of attainment of outcomes is the important one. If that becomes weak, the whole chain becomes weak. So that is the weakest link observed, in this outcome-based education system, the realistic measurement of attainment of outcomes. We need to be very careful in measuring the outcome. Different approaches are given by different institutions. but yet ultimately the program outcomes need to be attained with a realistic measurement. Okay, at course level as well as at the program level. Now moving further, what are the challenges in connecting these POs to the assessment? So this, of course, is going to be dealt in detail with by our colleague in the afternoon session. But again, if you look at the program outcomes, if you read the statements, each PO1, PO2, PO3 up to PO12, they represent fairly high-level generic goals that are not directly measurable. You cannot just give one test, or you cannot ask a few questions, and getting those answers will ensure you that this student has got this ability. No, they are so concentrated, so deep, and very high level, generic it is. The main thing is it is generic. We need to decode that. A realistic observability of and measurability of POs at course level is very, very difficult. You cannot say that there is one course which is going to fulfill the outcomes of one PO. No, collectively we have to do it. And again, the POs are so high-level generic statements, and it's very important for us to decode it and dissect it and understand it in the small parts of it, and then those small parts how a course can address. Through that, we are going to achieve our program outcomes. So, necessary to bring further clarity and specificity to the program outcomes is taken up very seriously, and this ACT exam reforms suggests a two-step method to enhance resolution of POs, to understand the POs, how to dissect it and how to bring it down to the course level, and through the course how that POs could be attained. It will be very wrong to say that those are all easy and it could be attained. It needs to be given a detailed study. As we go further, you will understand how concentratedly or how intensely they have framed these POs. For that, we have the ACT exam reforms is proposing a two-step process. That is, one is identifying the competencies and finding performance indicators of the truth. What is this? I'll just tell you. What are competencies? So every program outcome implies different abilities a student, a graduate should have. Different abilities he should be having by this learner. Every program, PO1, PO2 tells different, PO3 tells different. For example, I'll take up PO3. As we know, PO3 is about design and development of solutions. So if you look at only that thing, it looks simple, but further it goes, it expands. I'll take up the last part of this statement. Design solutions for complex engineering problems. So when you look at that, it is having design solutions for complex engineering. Complex engineering problem itself is a huge thing to understand. What is complex engineering problems? No doubt we are all solving many problems, and the students have been solving many problems. There are textual problems. No, complex engineering problems are much higher in level, and designing a solution to that. So that to fulfill that, to have those abilities addressed by this PO3, a graduate should have, a student or an engineering student should have these four abilities. Ability to define a complex open-ended problem in engineering terms, it's open-ended problem. Ability to generate diverse set of alternative design solutions, because it's a design and development of solutions. Ability to select the optimal design scheme for further development. Ability to advance an engineering design to define end state. Just to address this part of PO3, these are the very high-level abilities a student should possess. And now we have understood it in a deeper way. What are competence? These are the competencies. When I say these are the competencies. 1, 2, 3, 4 are the competencies a student should possess to do that designing the solutions for complex engineering problems. But not one course will not address this. As I said earlier, all the courses collectively have to achieve these program outcomes. Maybe a course can give the ability 1 and 2, ability number 1, ability number 2. A student can learn in one course, and another course can give it 2, 3, and 4 ability, like that. But collectively, all the courses are going to help him attain this program outcome number 3. So what I mean to say is that a course may or may not address a complete CO, a part of it can address. Now, how to measure those things? So as I said, these are the 4 abilities here, and how to measure them. Then comes the performance indicators. So these performance indicators are explicit statements of expectations of the student learning, what a student should learn and how it could be tested. So these performance indicators will help you in designing the questions. For example, I'll take competency 2, in the last slide I've shown you, ability to generate a diverse set of alternative design solutions. So how do you check whether a student has this ability or not? So for that, we are going to define performance indicators 1 and 2. We can have 3 also, no problem in that. Apply formal idea generation tools. You should have the ability to apply the formal idea generation tool to develop multiple engineering design solution. Then identify the functional and non-functional criteria for evaluation of alternate design solutions. So these things could be understood by only the faculty members who are familiar with the design part of your curriculum, out of your program. But if you look at that, these say performance indicators will help you design your assessments, design your questions. You can have a question which can test whether the student has the ability to apply the formal idea generation tools, or can he identify the functional or non-functional criteria. These abilities could be tested by appropriate questions. So these performance indicators will help you design your assessment, frame your questions in the test or in the examinations. And using two-step method definitely brings clarity in understanding the expectations of each POs. You have dissected the POs using this two-step method, the competencies and program performance indicators. Of course, this will be again dealt in detail in the coming sessions by our colleagues. I'm touching it only. I'm just telling what are the two-step process, what are competencies and what are performance indicators. So connecting course outcomes to performance indicators is going to be easy in this way. And examination questions, check the performance indicators, whether he has it or not. And the performance indicators tells you whether the course outcome is attained or not. And in turn, all the courses will tell us how the program outcome is attained. This is how it is all connected, interconnected, right from the examination questions to the program outcomes. By mapping examination questions with the PIs, we get clarity and better resolution for the assessment of COs and POs. Now, the second key issue what the ACT exam reforms addressed is the improving the structure and quality of assessment. This has been a concern, as I said, because this assessment drives the learning. The lower level, if you stuck at your assessment, the students' learning also gets stuck at the lower level. We need to raise the level of assessment so that the students' learning also rises along with it. And we need to be critically analyzing this and finding methods, different methods of assessing the students. So now the expectations, as you know, always are growing all the time as the technology improves, as the economy improves, as the country improves. The expectations also are going to be improved, growing all the time. if you ask 2 decades or 3 decades back, if you ask anybody who a good engineer is, then they would have said that a person with good technical abilities are the ones or the good engineers. But over a period of time, the emphasis has changed, and now in the present world, an engineer is expected to have many abilities, not only technical capability. Of course, it is required. It is the basic of all those things. He needs to be having other abilities like teamwork, critical thinking, ethics and social responsibility, communication, lifelong learning, problem solving, leadership. So all these, just to quote a few here. So all other these abilities are called as higher order abilities and professional skills. These are also are expected an engineer, a graduate engineer to have when he comes out of the program. And unfortunately, our curriculum system presently across all universities, if you see, now it is evolving, it is coming up, but majorly we focus on technical abilities and we teach technical subjects, and other abilities we are. If you look at the program outcomes again, these are all the reflections of the employer's expectations, we can say. What an employer wants his graduate, a graduate to be so that he can employ. So if you look at all those things, you just look at the 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Engineering knowledge, problem analysis, design and development of solutions, conduct investigations of complex problems, modern tool usage. All these 5 program outcomes are technical outcomes. If a student is technically good, technically sound, and is learnt his program very well, technical topics he has learnt, then you can assume that he has these 5 program outcomes. And what about the other 7 outcomes? Out of 12, only 5 are addressing technical outcomes, and other 7 are all professional outcomes. Engineering and society, environmental sustainability, ethics, individual and teamwork, communication, project management and finance, lifelong learning. These are all the professional requirements and the professional outcomes. These abilities a student should possess to have a good professional success. So how we teach this and how we assess this is the challenge. Our present system may not be that effective in addressing these issues. That's where we need to evolve. We need to find methods to successfully test all those things. When I say technical outcomes also, it's not that easy. See, the first 5, as I said, POs address the technical competency. But again, if you look at that, all the 5 POs statements, every statement, every program outcomes includes complex engineering problem. Complex engineering problem, complex engineering problem. What is this complex engineering problem? It's not that easy to understand that. It's a very higher order ability. Just mere, I think as I said, solving textbook problems or remembering some laws and reproducing it, know how to derive some equations may not be sufficient to solve a complex, real life complex engineering problems. It requires different abilities to be acquired. So achieving these 5 technical outcomes is also not that easy. That's what my point is. Apart from the 6 to 12 professional skills thing, 1 to 5, the technical things also has a serious needs a serious look into how we deliver and how we assess those things. So in the present exam system, as we all know, memorization occupies a dominant place. The students are given some questions in the 3 hours he has to sit and write, and he usually memorizes and a few understanding things, whatever he from the factual knowledge, he'll just recall that and he will just write the examination and finish it. But as I said, to assess those higher order abilities and the professional skills, these type of examinations may not be of that much help because that will not reflect those abilities and skills. So we need to find a way to deliver those skills at one stage and to assess those skills in the other stage. So for that, how we ensure that is the challenge. That's what we'll be addressing. For that, in that pursuit, there is one framework we make use of, that's called Bloom's taxonomy for assessment design. Earlier it was not there. In the last 10 years it is finding its importance, and Bloom's taxonomy tells you the different levels of learning. It starts at the bottom from remembering, and it goes towards the higher order learning, like understanding, applying, analyzing, evaluating, and creating. It's a revised Bloom taxonomy, which is the one which is adopted in engineering education. The revised one. The other Bloom's taxonomy before revised, it was only the top two were swapped. After analyzing, creating is to come, and afterwards evaluating is to come. It's like that now. The revised Bloom taxonomy is a popular framework in engineering education to structure assessment, as it characterizes the complexity and higher order abilities. You can see, as I said, our present education system will only help us in addressing the bottom two part of it, the remembering and the understanding level. We have to go beyond that. It's not just a mere test of memory. It has to test higher order abilities also. This will tell us how we should be assessing the students, what skills, what learning abilities of the students need to be. So if you see learning levels, as it goes up, it's all higher order abilities, and these are assessed. How to assess these things? Now, bottom remembering, understanding, applying, analyzing could be to some extent addressed by our fixed hour examinations, that is CIE and SEE, continuous internal evaluation, and the semester end examination. But other top two can never be. There is no way you can test those evaluating capacity. Of course, the evaluating term may be misleading. To evaluate something, we give them questions in a numerical problem and he will evaluate the thing. No, it's not evaluating. Right? Our colleague will explain that in detail, but it's higher order ability. And creating, you cannot just in 3 hours, you cannot test whether a student is creative enough or not. It requires definitely different approach. So that higher order abilities could be assessed through course projects over a period of time, mini projects, minor projects, capstone projects, open-ended problems. This is the present system what we are given it, right? Presently, many students, many universities, many institutions are adopting these assessment methods to check the learning levels, the students, whether they acquired those levels or not. Now, as I said, the third point which AICTE exam reforms addressed is assessing higher order abilities and professional skills. It is most important because this has been the requirement of the professional world for which the student is going to enter after his graduation. So we need to understand what are those higher order abilities and professional skills in detail. As I told, those technical program outcomes also addresses higher order abilities, and these higher order abilities also again need to be tested by having some questions related to the top 3 levels of Bloom taxonomy, and of course other professional and professional skills. The pivot 6 to pivot will also need to be addressed. So higher order ability challenges, what the challenges the faculties face. The main obstacle in addressing these outcomes is the limitation of educational experience we create within our engineering programs. What type of system we have developed, what facilities we have got in the college, and how we have planned to deliver, what is the method you are following. So all those things, right from the designing of a course, delivery of a course, and assessing it, all these things are educational experience, right? And that educational experience, what type we are giving it to him, giving it to a graduate. Based on that, these higher order abilities, higher order abilities can be assessed. Okay, that's the first 3 Bloom taxonomy: remember, understand, and apply to solve textbook problems. So first 3 levels will only a student, if he could able to solve some textbook problems, if we could able to recall some statements or some laws and some concepts, if you could reproduce it in the examination, solve some textbook problems, it will only make him to attain the first 3 levels of the Bloom's taxonomy. So other things need to have a different approach completely. So the professional skills also, as I said, these things can the engineering the society, environment and sustainability, ethics, individual and teamwork, communication, project management, finance, lifelong learning. So all these things it's very, very difficult for any graduate or any even faculty for that matter to teach that in a class or a particular set of classes. Any number of hours you take if you are sitting inside a classroom and teaching in front of the blackboard or showing in some PPTs also or some videos also, it's very difficult to make the student gain or attain or learn these abilities. So it's very difficult to assess also in our conventional education system. You cannot assess them whether the student has got these abilities or not through our conventional education system. So it has to be given a new approach. So there has to be comprehensive reforms if you want to address those higher order abilities assessment and professional skill assessments. You need to go give a three-dimensional approach. Again, as I said, educational experience, you have to have a good one. And to have that good education experience which will enable you to gain higher order abilities and professional skills, and the same could be assessed. For that, we need to look into again, revisit these things, the curriculum, the pedagogy, and the assessment. These things, as I said, it has to be planned thoroughly. The curriculum should be set so that these abilities could be checked, learned and checked, and those things should be properly delivered to them through appropriate pedagogy. And then it should be appropriately assessed through your assessment methods, maybe written examinations or any other type of evaluations methods, whatever you employ. So all these things combinedly are going to help you in assessing those higher order. Of course, these things will be dealt in detail. As I said, I'm only touching the upper part of all the topics. Every topic will be dealt in detail by our colleagues in the successive sessions. So as you know, this learning is always experimental and contextual. You cannot teach engineering without any context or without experimenting. So all those things. So that will enable us, that will make us to give a serious thought in designing. Of course, some affiliated colleges may say, sir, we are helpless in designing our curriculum because the curriculum will be decided by the university. Yes, of course, the universities also has to do something, also has to evolve and adopt this new scenario. And whatever the university says, and even then, after knowing the university syllabus is fixed, the faculties at the institution level will be having a little bit of freedom where I can impart some skills and higher order abilities and assess them. That will be dealt in detail later. So as I said, this assessing higher order abilities and professional skills could be done in these many ways. Right, mini or minor projects, final year projects. See, these things. See, when you want to do a project, maybe it is mini or minor or final year capstone project, the student has to experience a lot of things. No, he has to have technical knowledge. He has to have good communication skills. He has to have some decision making. So all those things, all higher order abilities may be reflected in those internship experiments. E-portfolios of students should be developed in a college. And course projects, each course can have a project work or small project. There are not all courses. Some courses can definitely plan so that a project can be done by learning this course. So open-ended experiments in the labs, not fixed experiments. Just open. That will be dealt again by our Dr. Chetan. I'll be telling you how these experiments in the lab could be used to build up higher order abilities. And project-based learning models, MOOCs, co-curricular experiences, all these things are one which will help us in assessing the higher order abilities and professional skills. Right? These experiences need very different tools for assessing student learning. So as I said, the present conventional assessment methods, you have to do away, not completely, but to some extent, and evolve in that methods and develop of appropriate rubrics is very, very important. Again, that will be dealt by our colleague in the later stages of the FDP. All these things plays very important role. That. And finally, the question is then about the aspect now, who has to do all these things and what needs to be done? Need to have a clarity again. So there are a lot of things. Of course, the faculty is the most important one who needs to understand this OBE completely, thoroughly through a lot of discussions. It's, as I said, it is not a thing which is to be learned. It has to be practiced. So you learn something and you start practicing it, then you evolve. So that's how it goes. You just cannot say that just now I understood the OBE completely and I implement it. No, it cannot be done like that. It's not practical. You need to give a serious attempt in learning and whatever the available knowledge on that is there, then implement it. And when you implement it, you will learn a lot. You will improvise, you will evolve. So every system, it's not a unique style, it's a diverse style. So every institution have got their own approaches. And in your institution, in your capacities, in your facilities, how you evolve your own system is going to be very crucial. And immediately some students, some faculties may ask, sir, can our students handle this? Yes, of course, as I said already, if you are stuck at the lower level of assessment, the learning level also will always stay low. You raise that. It's not a problem of the student. You can say it is not at all the problem of the students. They will rise to the level we set for them because they are having that capacity. It's only need to be provided to them. It's only need to be challenged to them. So you need to raise the level set by us, so that the students try to overcome that. That's the only way to see the progress. That's the only way to face the challenges. That's the only way to go positive in the positive direction. So you cannot just say that the students' quality is less. First, to some extent, but you have your own program wherein you can encourage and support the students to gain these higher order abilities and professional skills. It's always possible, provided you put a serious thought and serious try to that. So we need to set the standards which today's world and employers need. Ultimately, as I said, it's an outcome-based system. Whatever we give, the output to the world and that student what he is going to achieve in his future employment or in profession or career need to be, we expect it to be good, and for that we need to prepare them very well and to that standards, not just sending them out of the college with a degree in their hand. We need to make them see that they match the expectations of the employers. Now, these examination reforms, as we just gone through in a nutshell like that, and of course in detail it will be dealt in the successive sessions by my colleagues. It has to be a systemic reform. Not one faculty or two faculty can say that, okay, I'm going to do this. So it's good, but not sufficient. If it has to be implemented successfully and sustainable, if it has to be a sustainable one, then it has to be a systemic reform. One thing is going in one direction, other thing is going in the other direction. No, it cannot happen like that. It has to have a systemic approach, and there are a lot of things at different levels need to be done. And especially, as I said, the faculty level, as I said, he has to understand the OBE completely and do with dedication, and they try to evolve from time to time. And involve and evolve. When only when you get involved, you will evolve, you will understand, and you will improvise. That is the faculty part of it. And the institution, what institution should do for implementing these examination reforms successfully, they have to have an intense orientation of the faculty and academic leaders to adopt to these reforms. They have to have those programs in their college, give them enough time and facilities, and call in the experts and make them understand this thoroughly, involve them in a lot of discussions, let them put their questions, let them clear all their doubts, new ideas, who knows, can come from them. A completely new approach could be very useful in implementing these things. So need to have extensive discussions, open-minded discussions, and after that come up with your own institutional document. At the institution level, different programs you may be having, and have a unified vision. As the institution has a vision, Of course, all the departments also will have a vision, and all those visions will be in line with the institution vision. So whatever the assessment guidelines you are going to develop, so those things, all the institution document should be, institution will be should be coming up with their own documents, and based on the recommendations and space available to that institute there. So whatever the facility they have got, whatever the faculty members are there, and all those things, considering all those things, come to one agreement or one plan, and this is going to be our assessment method. This is going to be how we check these things. So have a vision, have a plan at the institution level, come up with a document, so that it will be there will be clarity to all the staff members. So you need to have that. And of course, you have to start with CIE and grow gradually. I mean, whatever the new idea you want to implement, the assessment method, you start with the continuous internal evaluation stage, and there you will see how the students react, how practically implemented, and what moderations you need to make, and how to improve on that. All those things you will just experience at the lower level, and then you can take it up to the SEE also in the later stages. You have to grow, you need to start with CIE and then grow gradually. Enhance experiential learning experiences. So it's not that is the weightage. It's not just I teach, you learn and go. They have to create an environment where the education, the learning is become an experience to them. Right? That lead to the holistic assessment of the student. As I said, first two levels of the Bloom's taxonomy we should not fix up, and the higher levels also we need to achieve. So if you want to create something, if you want to evaluate something, if you want to analyze something, so you need to have different abilities. And for that, those are all the things which comes from within. And for that, how you provide the environment, what facilities, what coaching, and what all I can support a student in building those abilities. So that's what, and of course, the use of technology, the IT, information technology, effectively to implement it. It goes without saying that this is going to, the IT is going to help us in doing all these things. It's going to make it more efficient and more quicker and more effective. That's for sure. The extensive use of technology, maybe in conducting classes, in designing or assessment, everything you can use this IT at the institution level. And of course, some institutions they may say, sir, well, we come under a university and we have to follow a few things, then what shall we do? Of course, there are some advices to the universities also. It's been made in the examination reforms, intense orientation of Board of Studies, the BOS, and the Board of Examinations of the universities to adopt to these reforms. They have been advised to do that. They have to take it up in a very bigger way. BOS and BOIs have to meet and discuss a lot of things at university level, so that they can come up with their own, again, university document, so that the affiliated colleges will have some clarity and a plan to implement these things. Without that, it's not possible. And of course, use of technology, again, at the university level is also of great use. So finally, I think I'm coming to the end of this presentation. My time is up to 11:30. Finally, again, I'll just go back after learning all these things. One thing must be clear in all participants' mind, that assessment drives students' learning is one thing which you have understood now, how the assessment is going to affect. And of course, the curriculum instruct the teacher what to teach, but what the student learn, they'll always learn what the exam instruct them to learn. So these two things you have to keep in mind. And implement. See, all these recommendations, what they've done, it's all scientific. One thing, not based on theory, but as I said, I forgot to mention the names of the research persons which we attended the workshop. The Professor Ashok Shettar, Professor Tiwari, and Professor Gopal Joshi, three eminent professors from KLE University, Technological University, Belgaum, has given us that 4 days workshop intensely and in detail. They have done a lot of research on this. They have visited a lot of universities in India and abroad, gained a lot of knowledge. All the best practices they have taken into consideration before designing, before making this policy. So it is not that based on some 1 or 2, 3 persons idea. It is all drawn with the best practices around the world. They have considered and they have come to that. And they have also, at the end of the workshop, had requested us to disseminate this and let it grow. It is not that which is to be, as I said, to be learned, but it is to be learned and practiced and evolve. This is what the things, the necessary at this stage of our education system. Pertaining to our focus is on education reforms, and our successive sessions will be intense. Having a focus on the OBE much, and then the later stages will be going into the assessment methods, right? Assessment techniques and methods, and how to structure your question papers, what are rubrics, how to make use of the Bloom's taxonomy. And before that, we'll be understanding what is OBE, what is PO, what is CO, how to map, how to write COs, and all those exercises we'll be doing over this FDP. And thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm sorry because I know what is there in the minds of all the participants, that it's actually these type of programs are always highly interactive. Many faculty members will be having many questions after looking into that. Because of some limitations we have, if it is an offline kind of FDP, then we would have had a lot of interactive sessions. But if it is online, it's very difficult to address all those things because of some various limitations here. But yet, what I suggest is, if you have any questions, please post it in the chat box. We try to address all those things and we'll get back to you with clarity on any things you want. So please, whatever the questions you have got, go through, type it in the what do you call chat box, and I request all the participants, especially when I have attended such programs in the past, I've seen that faculties tend to ask a particular specific questions related to their subject or their CO or their question, all those things. But it's very difficult if it is a mechanical department faculty. If it's a mechanical and that too in thermal subjects, I may be able to give a lot of clarification on that. But you need to understand in what context we are telling. The larger issues you need to understand, and then it is your responsibility is to implement that to your course. So you can do that provided you understood all these basic things in the beginning. That's my advice, and I thank the event coordinator, Mr. Tej Kumar, for helping me in preparing that PPT, because I was not able to do that because of some other reasons, and he has helped me in preparing that. I thank him, and I thank everybody responsible, our HOD and Dr. Ratnakar, who has initiated this program. And he was our HOD, now he has changed his office to the Dean office, and our HOD, Dr. Srinivas, Principal Dr. Basuraj L, and the management. And most importantly, my colleagues who are the co-resource persons who have gracefully agreed, okay, we'll do it, sir, and extensively prepared themselves in on the topics given to them and are raring to go. I hope all the participants will make use of that, and it's going to be a beneficial one. Thank you. Back to you, Mr. Tej Kumar.
Thank you very much, sir. So thank you for your wonderful presentation. I hope all the participants enjoyed his presentation and got the adequate information regarding the examination reforms. So dear participants, there is one particular information that I need to tell you all. So the second session for this particular day one starts at 12 o'clock. The updated meeting details have been mailed to the respective email IDs, what you have posted during the registration. So please find the particular link and please log in 10 minutes before. And when you log into the lobby, make sure that your microphone is muted. So we're going to take a leave if there is any questionnaire is not there. If any questionnaires are there, then definitely we're going to take that particular questions right now. So if not, we're going to leave at this moment, and please join us at 11:50. Thank you very much, sir.